Excuse me? Mrs. Kang's voice could have frozen fire. I said you were loud, Nadine repeated, her hand steady even though her heart was hammering. I was working. You were having a private conversation in a glass-walled conference room at 3 in the morning. I heard you. That's not eavesdropping. That's you being loud. You're definitely going to want to see how a 3 a.m. confrontation between a cleaning woman and a crime lord's mother changed everything. So, make sure you're subscribed. Turn on notifications so you catch all my videos because they're all this good, no cap. Comment, I'm ready if you're ready for this journey. All right, let's do this. You're loud. 2 words. That's all it took. 2 words from a woman in a cleaning uniform to one of Atlanta's most powerful Korean matriarchs. Mrs. Kang looked like someone had slapped her across the face with a dirty mop. Her son, Min Jae, the 32-year-old CEO of Lotus Holdings and rumored controller of half the city's shadow economy, stared at Nadine like she'd just performed a magic trick he couldn't figure out. And that's where this whole thing started. But let's back up. Nadine Joseph wasn't supposed to be in the executive suite of the Lotus Tower at all. The top floor, the one with marble imported from Italy and windows that overlooked all of Atlanta, was usually cleaned by Mrs. Park. Mrs. Park had been doing it for 5 years and knew all the rules. Don't touch Mr. Kang's desk. Don't reorganize anything in the conference room. Don't make eye contact if you happen to see him. Definitely don't speak unless spoken to. But Mrs. Park had called in sick with the flu and the cleaning company needed someone to cover the shift. Nadine had been working for ProClean Services for 2 years, mostly doing office buildings in Midtown. She needed the overtime. Her mother's medication wasn't getting any cheaper, and her little sister Micah's college tuition was due in 3 weeks. So when her supervisor called at 9 p.m., asking if she could cover the executive suite at the Lotus Tower, Nadine said yes before asking any questions. She'd arrived at 2:30 in the morning. The building was silent, except for the hum of the heating system and the occasional ping of the elevators. The security guard had given her a badge and explicit instructions. Executive floor, in and out. Don't touch anything you don't have to clean. Mr. King sometimes worked late, but he usually stayed in his private office and wouldn't bother her. The executive floor was exactly as intimidating as Nadine had imagined. Everything was sleek and modern and expensive looking, the kind of place where even the trash cans probably cost more than her monthly rent. She'd pushed her cart down the hallway, her sneakers squeaking softly against floors so polished she could see her reflection. She'd started with the bathrooms, then moved to the break room, then the conference room. That's where she'd been, emptying the pristine trash bins that barely had anything in them, when she heard the voices. Angry voices. A woman speaking English with a thick Korean accent, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. A man responding in that controlled way people do when they're barely holding onto their temper. Nadine had frozen, her hand still on the trash bin liner. She should leave, should grab her cart and disappear. The employee handbook had been very clear. If you encounter Mr. King, make yourself invisible. But something in the man's voice made her pause. Exhaustion. The kind of bone-deep tired that came from fighting battles you never wanted to fight in the first place. You've rejected 25 women? The older woman's voice carried clearly through the glass walls. 25 perfectly suitable matches from good families, educated women, beautiful women, women who understand our world, our culture. What exactly are you waiting for, Min Jae? I'm not waiting for anything, Yamoni. Min Jae's voice was colder, controlled in a way that suggested he'd had this conversation 100 times before. I'm simply not interested in marriage. We've discussed this. Discussed? You mean you've dismissed every reasonable suggestion I've made for 2 years? You're 32 years old. You need a wife. You need sons to continue your father's legacy. You need someone who can stand beside you in society, someone who knows how to navigate our community. Father's legacy? There was something bitter in Min Jae's laugh, something that made Nadine's chest tighten, even though she didn't know these people. Is that what we're calling it now? The empire built on intimidation and blood money? That legacy? Your father built something from nothing. He gave you everything you have. The least you can do is honor his memory by doing this one thing right. I've honored his memory by expanding his legitimate businesses, by making sure his employees are paid fairly, by slowly phasing out the parts of this operation that would have gotten him killed if he'd lived long enough. What I won't do is marry some woman I don't love just to make you happy. Love? Mrs. King's voice dripped with disdain. You think you get to have love? You're not some college boy, Min Jae. You're the head of this family. You're a crime lord whether you want to admit it or not. You don't get to have romantic fantasies. You get to have strategic partnerships. Then I'll stay unmarried. The Park family has offered their youngest daughter. She studied at Seoul National University. She speaks 4 languages. She volunteers with the Korean Cultural Center. She's elegant, educated, and from one of the most respected families in our community. She's boring. What? She's boring, Mother. They're all boring. Manufactured perfection with nothing real underneath. Perfect hair, perfect smiles, perfect resumes, and absolutely nothing genuine about any of them. They look at me and see a bank account and a status symbol. They don't see a person. What they see is their appropriate place in society. What they understand is duty and family and tradition. Things you seem to have forgotten. I haven't forgotten anything. I've just decided I want more than what you're offering. More? You want more? You want real? Mrs. Kang's voice went sharp. You're a crime lord, Min-jae. You don't get to have real. You get to have strategic. You get to have beneficial. You get to have appropriate. Those are your options. That's when Nadine's phone buzzed. Loud, impossibly, catastrophically loud in the 3 a.m. silence. The voices in the conference room stopped mid-argument. Nadine's heart dropped straight through the floor. She fumbled for her phone, silencing it, but it was too late. Footsteps coming toward her, fast and angry. The door swung open, and there he was, Min-jae, even more striking in person than the photo in the employee handbook suggested. Sharp jawline that could cut diamonds. Dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything about her in a single glance. Black suit that fit him so perfectly it had to be custom made. He looked like money and power and danger all wrapped up in one very attractive package. Behind him, his mother appeared. Mrs. Kang was elegant in a way Nadine had only seen in magazines. Cream suit, perfectly styled hair, jewelry that probably cost more than Nadine's car had. Her expression of disapproval could have withered plants. "Who are you?" Mrs. Kang demanded in English, her accent thick but her words precise. Nadine straightened her spine. She'd grown up in Little Haiti with a single mother who'd worked 3 jobs to keep them fed. She'd survived poverty, racism, and more than a few people looking at her like she was something they'd scraped off their shoe. She'd be damned if she'd shrink now. "Nadine Joseph, night cleaning crew. I was told to cover the executive floor tonight." She kept her voice steady, even though her hands wanted to shake. "You were eavesdropping." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. And that's when Nadine's mouth made a decision her brain definitely hadn't approved. "I was working. You were loud." The silence that followed was absolutely deafening. Mrs. Kang looked like she'd been slapped. Min-jae's eyebrows went up so high they nearly disappeared into his hairline. "How dare you speak to me that way?" Mrs. Kang said, her voice going dangerously quiet. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "No idea." Nadine tied off the trash bag she'd been holding, using the mundane task to hide how badly her hands were shaking now. "But whoever you are having a private conversation in a room made entirely of glass at 3 in the morning. That's not my fault." "You insolent little Aomoni." Min-jae's voice cut through his mother's outrage like a knife. He was staring at Nadine with an expression she couldn't quite read. Surprise, definitely. Maybe amusement. "It's fine. We were loud, and we're done here anyway." "We are absolutely not done." "We are." His tone left zero room for argument. "I'll call you tomorrow. We can finish this conversation then, at a reasonable hour, in a private location." Mrs. Kang glared at Nadine like she wanted to set her on fire with her mind. Then she turned that glare on her son. "This is not over, Min-jae." "It never is," he said quietly. Mrs. Kang swept out of the office in a cloud of expensive perfume and barely contained fury. The elevator doors closed behind her with a soft ding that sounded absurdly cheerful given the tension. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the argument had been. Min-jae studied Nadine for a long moment. She couldn't tell what he was thinking. His expression was carefully neutral, like he'd spent years learning how to hide his thoughts. "You're either very brave or very stupid," he said finally. Nadine hoisted the trash bag out of the bin and put in a fresh liner. "I've been called both. Sometimes in the same sentence." "Are you always this honest with people who could have you fired? Are you going to fire me? For what? Doing your job? For talking back to your mother?" Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "My mother doesn't control who I hire or fire. She'd like to think she does, but this is my company." And technically, you weren't talking back. You were stating facts. We were loud. Still probably shouldn't have said it. Nadine moved to the next trash bin, trying to focus on her work instead of the way her heart was still racing. No, probably not. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her work in a way that made her hyper-aware of every movement. But I'm glad you did. That made her pause. You are. It's been a long time since anyone's been that honest with my mother, or with me for that matter. He tilted his head slightly, still studying her. You're not afraid of me. It wasn't a question, but Nadine answered anyway. Should I be? Most people are. Most people didn't grow up where I grew up. She pulled the full trash bag out and tied it off. You're intimidating, sure. Rich, powerful, probably dangerous, but you're not the scariest thing I've dealt with this week. Now he definitely looked amused. The corner of his mouth twitched like he was fighting a smile. What was the scariest thing you dealt with this week? My little sister's report card. Girl brought home a D in English and tried to tell me it stood for doing great. 17 years old and thought I'd fall for that. Nadine shook her head, allowing herself a small smile at the memory of Micah's absolutely terrible attempt at lying. Took me 2 hours to convince her that studying was not, in fact, a form of cruel and unusual punishment. Min-jae did smile then. Actually smiled, not the practiced social smile, but something genuine that changed his whole face, made him look younger, almost. Approachable. You're interesting, Nadine Joseph. You're blocking my way, Min-jae King. His smile widened. People probably didn't talk to him like that. Probably treated him with fear and deference and fake respect. She could see the surprise in his eyes, the way he was looking at her like she was a puzzle he actually wanted to solve. He moved aside, but his eyes followed her as she pushed her cart back into the hallway. Same time tomorrow night? He asked. Nadine paused, looking back at him. Probably. Someone's got to clean up after you rich people. Then I'll see you tomorrow. Mr. King, I'm just the cleaning lady. You don't need to see me. That's kind of the whole point of the night shift. Maybe I want to see you, he said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. Nadine told herself the flutter in her chest was just adrenaline. Just the relief of not getting fired. It definitely had nothing to do with the way Min-jae was looking at her like she'd just done something extraordinary instead of just talking back to his mother. Good night, Mr. Kang, she said finally. Min-jae, he corrected. If you're going to tell my mother she's loud, we're past formalities. Good night, Min-jae. Good night, Nadine. She finished her shift in a daze, going through the motions of cleaning the rest of the executive floor while her mind replayed the conversation on loop. When she finally made it home at 6 in the morning, the apartment was quiet. Her mother was still asleep, and Micah had already left for her early morning class. Nadine collapsed onto her bed without changing out of her uniform, staring at the ceiling and wondering what the hell she'd just done. She talked back to one of the most powerful women in Atlanta's Korean community. She'd been sarcastic to a man who probably had people killed for less. She'd been offered to come back tomorrow like it was an invitation instead of just another night shift. She should be terrified. Should be looking for a new job. Should be preparing for the inevitable call from her supervisor saying she'd been let go. Instead, she was thinking about the way Min-jae had smiled. Really smiled. Not that practiced social expression, but something genuine. Something that made her want to see it again. You're an idiot, Nadine, she told herself out loud, a complete and total idiot. But she showed up the next night anyway. The executive floor was supposed to be empty. That's what the schedule said. Mr. Kang had meetings off-site, wouldn't be in the building. Nadine could clean in peace without worrying about running into him again. Except when the elevator doors opened on the top floor, she could see light spilling out of his office. She stood there for a moment, debating. She could go back downstairs. Tell her supervisor the floor was occupied and she'd come back later. It would be the smart thing to do, the safe thing. Instead, she pushed her cart down the hallway toward that light. Min-jae was in his office, surrounded by paperwork. Documents covered every surface. His desk, the conference table, even parts of the floor. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, and he had the look of a man who'd been working for hours without a break. You actually work at 3 a.m.? Nadine asked from the doorway. He looked up, and something in his expression shifted, lightened, like her presence had released some tension he'd been carrying. Apparently so. Come in. I need to clean your office. Then clean it. I won't bother you. That was a lie, and they both knew it. Nadine started with the windows while Min-jae pretended to focus on his documents, but she could feel his attention on her. Not creepy or intrusive, just present, aware of her in the room. The silence stretched between them, loaded with things neither of them was saying. Finally, Nadine couldn't take it anymore. "You told your mother all those women were boring," she said, wiping down the glass with steady strokes. "What would make someone not boring? Why?" His tone was teasing, but there was something underneath it, something curious and maybe a little bit hopeful. "You volunteering? Please, I'm a cleaner who takes the bus to work and shares a 2-bedroom apartment with her mother and sister. I'm about as far from your world as possible." "That doesn't answer my question." Nadine paused, turning to look at him. "What question? What makes someone interesting?" Min-jae set down his pen, giving her his full attention in a way that made her skin warm. "You asked what would make someone not boring. I want to know what you think." "I think..." Nadine chose her words carefully. She got the sense that this conversation mattered more than it should. "I think someone's interesting when they surprise you, when they're not performing who they're supposed to be, but actually being who they are, flaws and all, contradictions and all, messy and real and human. And you think those 25 women were performing? Weren't they? Trying to be the perfect wife for the perfect criminal empire?" She saw his jaw tighten and added more softly, "People spend so much time trying to be what other people want that they forget to be themselves. It's exhausting to watch, even more exhausting to do." Min-jae was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face like he was looking for something. "You're right," he said finally. "They were all performing. Perfect hair, perfect manners, perfect families, perfect everything. Not a single genuine moment among them. Every smile calculated, every word chosen for maximum strategic impact, every gesture designed to impress." "Must get lonely." "Why do you say that?" "Because being around people who aren't real is sometimes lonelier than being alone." Nadine went back to cleaning, but her voice stayed gentle, understanding. "At least when you're alone, you're not disappointed. You're not watching people pretend and wondering if anyone will ever just be honest with you." She heard him stand up, heard his footsteps cross the office. Suddenly, he was close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something dark and woody that probably cost more than her rent, but somehow suited him perfectly. "Are you real, Nadine Joseph?" She turned to face him, finding him closer than she'd expected. Close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to see the faint scar on his left eyebrow, close enough to feel dangerous. "Real enough to know this is a bad idea," she said quietly. "What is?" "Whatever you're thinking right now." "I'm thinking..." Min-jae's eyes searched her face, lingering on her eyes, her mouth back to her eyes. "I'm thinking that I've never met anyone quite like you." "You've never met a cleaner before?" "I've never met someone who talks to me like I'm just a person. Not a boss, not a threat, not an opportunity, not a status symbol. Just a person." His voice dropped lower, more vulnerable. "Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Nadine's breath caught. There was something raw in his expression, something lonely and hopeful and scared all at the same time. Something that told her Min-jae had spent years being surrounded by people and feeling completely alone anyway. "You are just a person," she said quietly. "A person who made some choices your father probably started and you inherited. A person who's tired and lonely and surrounded by people who want things from you. A person who works until 3 a.m. because it's easier than going home to an empty house. A person who deserves more than strategic marriages and manufactured perfection. You see all that from cleaning my office twice?" "I see people, Min-jae. It's a gift or a curse. Haven't decided which yet." She allowed herself a small smile. "My mama always said I could read people like books, that I saw things other folks missed." He reached out, slowly, giving her time to move away, and tucked a stray braid behind her ear. The gesture was so gentle it made her throat tight, like she was something precious, something worth being careful with. "Have coffee with me," he said. "It's 3 a.m. "Then have 3 a.m. coffee with me." His hand was still near her face, not quite touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth. "Please." "This is a terrible idea," Nadine said, but she was already nodding. Already stepping back to put the cleaning supplies down, already following him out of the office. They ended up in the executive break room with its fancy espresso machine and its view of the Atlanta skyline. Min-jae made coffee that tasted like battery acid. Nadine actually laughed at his offended expression when she spit the first sip back into her cup. "What's wrong with it?" he demanded. "Everything. What did you do? Just press random buttons? I follow the instructions. Those are suggestions, not instructions. Here, move. She nudged him aside and started over, measuring carefully, adjusting the settings, paying attention to the small details. Coffee's not rocket science. You just have to pay attention. Care about what you're doing. He watched her hands like she was revealing sacred secrets. Show me. So she did. Walked him through each step, explained why each part mattered, let him try again under her guidance. The second cup was better. Not perfect, but drinkable. They sat at the small table by the window and talked until sunrise. Min-jae told her about growing up as the son of a crime lord, the weight of expectations pressing down on him from the time he could walk, the violence he'd witnessed and participated in, the choices he'd made that he wasn't proud of, the slow, careful work of trying to become someone better than his father had been. I'm not a good man, he said at one point, staring into his coffee cup. I've done things, terrible things, hurt people, destroyed lives, built this empire on fear and blood money. You're trying to be better now, Nadine pointed out. That counts for something. Does it? Does trying erase what I've done? No, but it means you're not stuck being that person forever. People can change if they want to badly enough. Nadine told him about her mother fleeing Haiti after Nadine's father was killed in political violence, about growing up poor but loved, about her mother working herself sick to give her daughters opportunities, about taking on the responsibility of raising Micah when their mother got too sick to work full-time, about dreams of going to college that she'd put on hold indefinitely. Why didn't you go? Min-jae asked. To college. Money, family, life? Nadine shrugged like it didn't hurt, like she hadn't cried over that particular lost dream more times than she could count. Same reason most people don't do what they dream of. Reality got in the way. What would you study? If you could. Accounting, business management. I know, super exciting, right? You like numbers? He sounded genuinely curious. I like things that make sense. Numbers always make sense. They tell you the truth if you know how to read them. They don't lie or perform or pretend to be something they're not. 2 + 2 is always 4. Revenue minus expenses equals profit or loss. There's honesty in that. Min-jae smiled, that genuine smile that transformed his whole face. I have about 15 accountants on staff. Not one of them has ever said numbers tell the truth. They spend their entire careers finding ways to make numbers lie. That's because they're looking for ways to hide the truth. I'd rather find it. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe. Interest. Definitely. You're wasted on cleaning, Nadine. Cleaning pays the bills. What if you could do something harder? Something that used that brain you're hiding? I'm not hiding anything. Yes, you are. You're brilliant, and you're working a job that doesn't challenge you because you think it's all you deserve. I'm offering you more. You don't even know me. I know enough. He leaned forward, intense and focused entirely on her. You caught accounting errors in my mother's argument that I didn't even notice. You read people. You see patterns. You're exactly what I need. For what? For my businesses. The legitimate ones. I need someone who can look at the numbers and tell me the truth. Find the problems, fix the systems, someone I can trust. Nadine stared at him. You're offering me a job? We've known each other for like 12 hours. Best 12 hours I've had in months. He wasn't smiling now. He was serious, completely serious. I'm offering you a chance. Take it or don't, but don't say no because you don't think you're good enough. You're better than good enough. The sun was starting to stream through the windows, painting the break room in shades of gold and pink. Nadine checked her phone and swore softly. I've got to finish the other floors before the day crew comes in. Skip them. I need this job. You'll still have it. I'll tell them I kept you late working on a project. A project? I'm a cleaner, not a consultant. Who says you can't be both? Min-jae stood, and there was something different in his demeanor. More energized, more alive than he'd seemed when she first walked in. Think about it. My offer. You could do both for a while. Clean and consult. See if you like it. This is insane. Probably, but what do you have to lose? Everything, Nadine thought. I have everything to lose. My job, my safety, my heart if I'm not careful. But what she said was, I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. She thought about it for exactly one day before saying yes. Because the truth was she'd been dying of boredom in her cleaning job. Because she'd always been good with numbers. Because the look of respect in Min Jae's eyes. When she explained, accounting principles had made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. And maybe, if she was being really honest with herself, because she wanted to see him again. Wanted more of those 3 a.m. conversations. More of that genuine smile. That's how Nadine ended up with 2 jobs. By day, she was still part of the cleaning crew. By night, she was in Min Jae's office poring over financial records for his restaurant chain, his hotels, his import businesses. She found problems immediately. Money disappearing in small increments that added up to thousands. Fraudulent vendor accounts, inventory numbers that didn't match sales figures, supply orders that didn't exist. How did no one catch this? Nadine demanded one night, showing Min Jae her findings. 3 weeks in, and she'd already found enough theft to account for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because they weren't looking, or they were in on it. His expression went dark in a way that reminded her exactly who she was working for. Good work. What happens to them, the people who were stealing? What do you think should happen? Nadine thought about it carefully. This was a test. She could feel it. I think you fire them and press charges if you can prove it. I think you fix the system so it's harder to steal next time. I think you make an example that's legal, not... She gestured vaguely. Whatever crime lords do, which I don't actually want to know about. Min Jae laughed. Actually laughed, the tension draining from his shoulders. Fair enough, and that's exactly what we'll do. Legal consequences, system improvements, no bodies. I didn't think there would be bodies. Didn't you? He raised an eyebrow. Okay, maybe a little, but I'm glad I was wrong. He took her advice. The thieves were fired and prosecuted where possible. The systems were overhauled. Nadine's role quietly expanded from part-time consultant to something more. She got her own desk in Min Jae's office. Access to financial records that would probably get her killed if anyone outside knew what she was looking at. A salary that was 3 times what she'd been making cleaning. You're paying me too much, she protested when she saw the first paycheck. I'm paying you what you're worth. There's a difference. The weeks turned into months. Nadine learned the rhythms of Min Jae's life, the way he'd work until he nearly collapsed, how he'd skip meals when he was focused, the nightmares that sometimes had him pacing his office at 4 a.m. when she arrived for their work sessions. She started leaving food in his office when he forgot to eat. He started making sure she took breaks during long work sessions. It became a quiet dance between them, neither acknowledging what was happening, but both participating anyway. Small intimacies that meant everything. Learning how he took his coffee, 3 sugars, heavy cream, even though it was terrible for him. The way he'd absently touched the scar on his left hand when he was thinking hard about something. How he'd switched to Korean when he was on the phone with business associates, his voice taking on different textures in his first language. And he learned her too, that she twisted her braids when she was concentrating, that she hummed old Haitian folk songs under her breath when she was happy, that she had to tell when the numbers didn't make sense, a little furrow between her eyebrows that meant she'd found something wrong. You haven't called your family this week, he said one Sunday morning. They'd started working Sundays too, though Nadine suspected it was less about work and more about neither of them wanting to be apart. Didn't have time. Make time, use the office phone, talk as long as you need. Nadine stared at him. That's not... I can use my cell phone. I don't need to run up your business line. I'm not asking, I'm telling you, call your family, your mother, your sister, talk as long as you want. Family is important. I won't be the reason you lose touch with yours. Her father had died when she was 3. She barely remembered him, but her mother talked about him sometimes, about how he'd always said family was everything, that you could lose money, status, possessions, but family was forever. Looking at Min Jae now, at the sincerity in his expression, Nadine felt something crack open in her chest. Thank you, she said quietly. Stop thanking me for basic human decency, he muttered, but there was something almost gentle in his voice. Her mother cried when she called, happy tears because she'd been worried. Nadine had been so busy lately, so distracted. Was everything okay? Was she taking care of herself? I'm okay, man. Better than okay, actually. I got a new job. Better pay. Using my brain instead of just my hands. Tell me about it. So Nadine did. Edited version, of course. She didn't mention that her boss was a crime lord or that she was maybe falling for him. Just that she was doing financial consulting for a business owner. That she was learning so much that she felt valued for the first time in years. Micah got on the phone and demanded details. Is he cute? Your boss, is he cute? Micah, I'm not talking to you about this. That's a yes. Oh my God, you're totally into him. Does he know? Have you guys kissed? Nadine, you have to tell me everything. I have to tell you nothing. Focus on your own love life and stay out of mine. But she was smiling when she hung up 3 hours later. Smiling and maybe crying a little bit, overwhelmed by how much she missed them. How much she loved them. How much she wished she could tell them everything. When she finally ended the call, Min-jae was in the hallway. She didn't know how long he'd been standing there. Better? He asked. Yeah, thank you. You say that a lot. You do a lot worth thanking you for. Not really. This is just normal. How people should treat each other. It's not normal for me. People don't usually care if I talk to my family or eat meals or take breaks. You do. He stepped closer, and Nadine's breath caught. They'd been doing this dance for months now, getting close, but never too close. Careful. So careful. I care about you, Nadine, he said quietly. More than I should, probably. More than is smart given our situations. But I care. I care about you too, she admitted. And you're right. It's probably not smart. So we'll be stupid together. Together? If you want. I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just saying I care. What you do with that information is up to you. What Nadine did was lean in and hug him. Just a hug. Arms around his waist, her head against his chest, breathing him in. It wasn't a kiss, wasn't a declaration, but it was real, it was honest, and it was the beginning of everything. Min-jae hugged her back. His arms came around her shoulders, solid and warm, and for a moment they just stood there in the hallway outside his office, holding each other like they were the only two people in the world. When they finally pulled apart, something had shifted between them. No more pretending, no more dancing around it. They cared about each other, and now they both knew it. 3 months into this new normal, everything changed again. Min-jae came to work one evening with tension radiating off him like heat. Nadine could see it the moment he walked into the office. The rigid set of his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. The way his jaw was clenched so hard she worried about his teeth. What happened? She asked, looking up from the quarterly reports she'd been reviewing. My mother is hosting a gathering this weekend. He didn't look at her, just started organizing papers on his desk with sharp, angry movements. She's invited 6 more potential wives and their families, plus business associates, plus half the Korean community in Atlanta. She's determined to see me married by the end of the year. So tell her no. I have, repeatedly. She doesn't listen. She just keeps pushing, keeps inviting these women, keeps creating situations where I'm expected to play along. Then don't go. It's not that simple. Min-jae finally looked at her, and there was frustration and exhaustion written all over his face. These are strategic families. Business relationships my father built, I can't just insult them by not showing up. My mother knows that. She's using it against me. Nadine was quiet for a moment, her mind working through possibilities. Then she said carefully, What if you showed up with someone? Min-jae's head snapped up. What? A date. Someone who makes it clear you're not interested in their matchmaking, someone who shows them you've already chosen. Who would I bring? I don't date. I work. That's my entire life. Nadine's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. Me, if you wanted, you could bring me. The silence was deafening. Min-jae stared at her like she'd suggested flying to the moon without a spacecraft. Nadine! He said her name carefully, like he was handling something fragile. If I brought you to my mother's gathering, it would mean something. To her, to those families, to everyone watching. It would be a declaration. A statement that I'm choosing you over everything she wants for me. I know. She would hate you on sight. She'd see you as a threat to everything she's planned for me. She'd make your life hell. She has connections everywhere. She could make things very, very difficult for you. I know that too. Then why would you offer? Nadine stood up, moving around the desk to stand in front of him. Because you look like you're drowning. Because for 3 months we've been dancing around something neither of us will name. Because I'm tired of pretending I don't care about you when I think about you constantly. And because someone needs to tell your mother that you're a person, not a chess piece. If we do this. Min-jae's voice was rough. If I bring you into my world like that, there's no going back. My mother will make your life hell. People will talk. You'll be associated with me, with my business, with everything that comes with it. The legitimate parts and the parts that aren't so legitimate. Are you trying to talk me out of it? I'm trying to make sure you understand what you'd be walking into. This isn't some romantic movie where we show up and everyone claps and accepts us. This is real life. real consequences, real danger. Nadine reached out and took his hand. His skin was warm, his fingers longer than hers, his palm slightly rough. I understand. And I'm choosing to walk in anyway. He looked at their joined hands, then at her face, and something in his expression cracked open. Raw and vulnerable and scared. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you've got me anyway if you want me. I want you. Minjae's voice dropped to barely a whisper. God, Nadine, I've wanted you since you told my mother she was loud, since you made me coffee that didn't taste like death, since you looked at me like I was just a person instead of a monster. You're not a monster. I've done monstrous things, and you're trying to do better. That's what matters to me. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. They stood like that for a long moment, breathing each other in, holding on to each other like anchors. This is going to be a disaster, Minjae said finally. Probably, but it'll be our disaster. The gathering was at Mrs. Kang's mansion in Brookhaven, and it was exactly as awful as Nadine had expected. Actually, it was worse. She'd agonized over what to wear for 3 days. Everything she owned felt wrong, too casual, too cheap-looking, too obvious that she didn't belong in this world. Micah had helped her shop, using money Nadine had been saving for emergencies to buy a simple black dress that was elegant without trying too hard. You look beautiful, Micah had said, helping with her hair. They'd spent 2 hours braiding it into an intricate updo that made Nadine feel like royalty. I look terrified, Nadine had replied, staring at herself in the mirror. That too, but mostly beautiful. Minjae had picked her up at 7. When he saw her, his eyes went soft in that way that made her chest tight. You're breathtaking. It's the dress. It's you. It's always been you. But the moment they walked into his mother's house, Nadine felt every eye turn to her. The disapproval was so thick she could practically taste it. Women in expensive hanbok and designer dresses looked her up and down with expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. Men in $1,000 suits assessed her like a problem to be solved. Mrs. Kang's face when she saw Nadine was like watching ice form in real time. Minjae! Her voice could have cut steel. What is this? Gyomani, this is Nadine Joseph. My date. Your date. Mrs. Kang's English was crisp and cutting, each word perfectly enunciated. You brought the cleaning girl to a formal gathering? I brought the woman I care about. Minjae corrected, his hand steady and protective on Nadine's lower back. Is there a problem? Multiple problems, but we'll discuss them later, privately. Mrs. Kang turned away, dismissing them both like they were servants who disappointed her. The evening was brutal, absolutely brutal. Other guests either ignored Nadine completely or asked her pointed questions designed to make her feel inferior. Where did she go to school? What did her family do? How exactly did she meet Minjae? What were her intentions? An older woman in a gorgeous silk hanbok looked down her nose at Nadine. So you clean buildings for a living. I consult on financial management, Nadine replied evenly. The cleaning was a side job. How resourceful. The woman's tone suggested it was anything but a compliment. And your family? What do they do? My mother works in hospitality. My sister's in college studying engineering. How nice. And your father? He was killed in Haiti when I was young. The woman's expression didn't change. No sympathy, no apology for bringing up painful memories. Just cold assessment. I see. Through it all, Minjae stayed at her side. When someone asked what she did for a living, he said, financial consulting without blinking. When an older man made a comment about exotic beauties, Minjae's response was so cold the man actually flinched and walked away. When a woman suggested Nadine must be very ambitious to pursue someone like Minjae, he cut in with a sharp reminder that he'd pursued her, not the other way around. But the worst was watching the parade of eligible women, beautiful, accomplished, perfect women who spoke Korean and came from powerful families and looked at Minjae like he was a prize they deserved to win. That's Yuna, Minjae murmured as a stunning woman in a traditional hanbok approached. She moved like a dancer, graceful and deliberate. My mother's current favorite. We dated briefly years ago. It ended badly. Yuna smiled at Minjae with practiced warmth, then looked at Nadine with barely concealed disdain. So you're the American girl. How unexpected. Life is full of surprises, Nadine replied evenly. Clearly, though I'm sure this is just a phase. Minjae has always been curious about different experiences before settling down with someone appropriate. Yuna's smile was sweet, but her eyes were venomous. It's good to explore while you're young, don't you think? Yuna. Min-jae's voice could have frozen fire. Watch yourself. I'm only stating facts. Your mother has told me all about your plans. The expansion into Seoul, the new partnerships, how you'll need a wife who understands both cultures, both business worlds. Someone who can navigate Korean society, who knows the right people, who can give you children who will be accepted in both countries. My mother doesn't make my plans, I do. And those plans include Nadine. Do we understand each other? Yuna's smile faltered. She said something in Korean, sharp and fast. Min-jae responded in the same language, his tone leaving no room for argument. Yuna's face went red, and she walked away with her head high but her composure clearly shaken. What did she say? Nadine asked quietly. Nothing worth translating. Min-jae's jaw was tight enough to crack. Are you okay? I've survived worse parties. Barely, but I have. Liar. Okay, yes, this is terrible. This is actually the worst social experience of my entire life. But I'm surviving. She squeezed his hand. We just have to make it a few more hours. They didn't make it one more hour. Mrs. King pulled Min-jae aside into a private study. When Nadine tried to follow, she was physically blocked by another guest, an older man who positioned himself in the doorway like the bouncer. Family business, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm sure you understand. Through the partially open door, Nadine could hear the argument escalating, Mrs. Kang's voice rising in pitch, Min-jae's responses getting sharper. This is an embarrassment, bringing that girl here to my home in front of everyone who matters. That girl has a name. Use it. She's beneath you, Min-jae, beneath our family, our standing, everything we've built. She's black, she's poor, she's uneducated. She has more education than half the people in this room. She's brilliant, she's kind, she's real, which is more than I can say for anyone you've tried to force on me. You think you can build a life with her? You think she can handle your world? She's a cleaner who stumbled into your office. She doesn't know our culture, our language, our ways. She'll never fit in. And you'll wake up one day and realize you've thrown everything away for someone who can never truly be part of your life. She's already part of my life. She's the best thing that's happened to me in years. Then you're a fool. Mrs. King's voice went dangerously quiet. And I will not stand by and watch you destroy everything your father died for over some infatuation with someone so completely unsuitable. If you continue this, there will be consequences. For you, for your businesses, for her. Are you threatening her? I'm stating facts. You think you can protect her from everything? You think your little rebellion won't have costs? Wake up, Min-jae. You're playing a game you can't win. That's your choice, Yamoni, but I'm making mine, and I choose her. The door swung open hard enough to bang against the wall. Min-jae emerged looking like he'd been in battle, his mother right behind him with fury radiating off her in waves. Mrs. King's gaze landed on Nadine like a targeting laser. You may think you've won something here, Mrs. King said quietly, each word precisely, placed like a knife. But you have no idea what you've started. No idea what it costs to be part of this family. You'll break under the pressure, and when you do, when you run back to your little life, you'll leave my son broken behind you. I'm not running anywhere, Nadine said, finding her voice even though her hands were shaking. And I'm not going to break. We'll see. Min-jae took Nadine's hand. We're leaving. They didn't speak until they were in his car, the mansion disappearing in the rearview mirror. Min-jae pulled over on a quiet street and just sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. I'm sorry, he said finally. I'm so sorry for exposing you to that, for my mother, for all of it. You warned me it would be bad. I didn't think it would be that bad. I didn't think she'd threaten you directly. He turned to look at her, and there was anguish in his eyes. Nadine, what I said in there about you being the best thing in my life, I meant it, every word. I know. It's going to get worse before it gets better. My mother won't let this go. She'll make things difficult. People will talk. Your life is about to get very complicated. Min-jae. Nadine waited until he was looking at her, really looking at her. I'm from Little Haiti. My mom fled a dictatorship with nothing but me in her belly and hope in her heart. I've been poor, exhausted, scared, and struggling my entire life. Your mother's disapproval? That's just another Tuesday for me. You're extraordinary, he whispered. I'm stubborn. There's a difference. No, you're extraordinary, and I'm falling in love with you. The words hung between them like a bridge, like an invitation, like a promise. Nadine's eyes filled with tears. That's really inconvenient timing, she said, her voice breaking. I know. Because I'm falling in love with you too, and we both know this is going to be a disaster. Probably. Definitely. Your mother is going to make our lives hell. She's going to try. Min-jae reached over and cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs gentle on her cheekbones. Worth it. Yeah. Nadine breathed. Yeah, you're worth it. He kissed her then, soft at first, questioning, giving her a chance to pull away. When she didn't, when she leaned in instead, the kiss deepened, became something more, became a promise, became the beginning of them. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were shaking. What do we do now? Nadine asked. We figure it out together. Whatever comes next, we face it together. No running, no giving up. Together, Nadine agreed. What came next was a systematic campaign to destroy their relationship. Mrs. Kang wasn't just angry. She was strategic, methodical. She used every connection, every resource, every ounce of power she had to make their lives hell. It started subtly. Nadine's cleaning contract with Pro Clean Services was suddenly terminated. No explanation, just a form letter saying her services were no longer required. When she called her supervisor, the woman sounded uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Nadine. The decision came from higher up. I can't give you details. Higher up meaning who? I really can't say. I'm sorry. Min-jae tried to hire her officially as a financial consultant for Lotus Holdings. Full-time position, benefits, salary that would change her life, but the board blocked it. Suddenly, there were concerns about her qualifications, questions about her background, demands for credentials she didn't have. This is my company, Min-jae said furiously during the board meeting. I make the hiring decisions. For executive positions, the board has oversight, one of the older members replied smoothly. It's in the bylaws your father established. We're simply doing our due diligence. This is because of my mother. This is because we have standards. Then Nadine's apartment building suddenly had issues with her lease. The landlord called saying there had been complaints. Noise complaints, though Nadine was never home to make noise and her neighbors had never mentioned any problems. The lease would not be renewed when it was up in 60 days. Her mother's workplace cut her hours, from 30 hours a week to 15. No explanation. Just a new schedule that made it impossible to pay bills. This is your mother, isn't it? Nadine asked Min-jae 3 weeks into the onslaught. She has connections everywhere. She's using all of them. Yes. His expression was grim. He looked exhausted, like he was fighting battles on every front and losing. She's calling in every favor, using every relationship. She's trying to make your life so difficult that you'll leave me. What do? You let me help. Please, Nadine, let me fix this. So, Min-jae bought out Nadine's apartment building, just bought the whole thing, reinstated her lease and the leases of every other tenant who'd been threatened. He found Nadine's mother a better job at one of his hotels, better pay, better hours, better benefits. He hired Nadine directly as a personal consultant, a position that didn't require board approval. You can't just buy a building every time your mother makes my life difficult, Nadine protested. Watch me. But Mrs. Kang wasn't done, not even close. Someone leaked to the Korean community newspapers that Min-jae was dating a black cleaning woman. The articles were racist and cruel. They questioned Nadine's motives, suggesting she was a gold digger who'd seduced him for money. They published photos of her leaving his office late at night, making it look sordid. They interviewed so-called experts who talked about the dangers of interracial relationships, the loss of cultural identity, the betrayal of traditional values. They don't know you, Min-jae said furiously, reading the translations Aunt Hannah had sent him. They don't know anything about you. This is all lies and racism and fear. Doesn't matter. People believe what they want to believe. Nadine felt numb reading the articles, seeing her face beside words like opportunist, outsider, threat. Maybe I should just go. Make this easier for you. No. Min-jae, your business is suffering. Your reputation in the Korean community is destroyed. Your mother is systematically dismantling everything you've built. How long can you fight this? As long as it takes. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. I'm not giving up on us. Not because my mother disapproves. Not because some racist newspapers print lies. Not because people can't see what I see when I look at you. What do you see? Everything. I see my future. I see home. I see the woman I want to build a life with. I see someone brave enough to stand beside me even when it costs her everything. Nadine started crying. Big, ugly sobs that she'd been holding back for weeks. Min-jae held her while she cried, his hand gentle on her back, his voice soft in her ear. "We'll get through this," he murmured. "I promise. We'll find a way." When she finally calmed down, her face was wet and her eyes were swollen, but she felt clearer, stronger. "We need help," she said. "We can't fight this alone. Your mother has allies. We need to find ours." "What kind of help?" "I don't know, but there have to be other people who have been where we are. Other interracial couples, other people who have fought against this kind of prejudice. We need to find them." The help came from an unexpected source. Min-jae's aunt, his father's sister, reached out requesting a meeting. Hana had been living in California for decades after marrying a Japanese-American man against her family's wishes. She'd stayed in touch with Min-jae over the years, but had kept her distance from Mrs. King. They met at her hotel suite in downtown Atlanta. Hana was in her 60s, elegant and sharp-eyed, with an air of someone who'd fought her own battles and won. "I know what you're going through," Hana said over tea, her English perfect with just a hint of an accent. "When I married Kenji, my family cut me off. Your grandmother, Min-jae, she was particularly brutal. She told me I was dead to her, that I'd betrayed everything our family stood for." "I didn't know that," Min-jae admitted. "Mother never talks about you." "Of course she doesn't. It would require admitting she was on the wrong side of history." Hana's expression soured. "Your father was young then, but he stood by me. He was the only one. He sent money when we were struggling, came to visit when I had my children. He understood what it meant to choose love over tradition. And when he married your mother," Hana continued, looking at Min-jae, "I hope she'd remember what it felt like to fight for love. Your grandmother didn't approve of your mother at first. Did you know that? She came from a family that was wealthy but not connected enough. Your grandmother made their early years very difficult." "I had no idea." "Your mother has conveniently forgotten her own history, but we remember. Those of us who fought these battles, we remember. And we're not going to let another generation suffer the same way we did." "Why are you telling us this?" Nadine asked. "Because I have resources your mother doesn't. Business connections and communities she hasn't touched. Friends and places she can't reach." Hana slid a folder across the table. "These are contracts with Asian American business groups in California, Texas, and New York. They're willing to partner with Min-jae if he's interested in expanding outside Atlanta. It would diversify your base, reduce your mother's influence, give you independence." Min-jae opened the folder, scanning the documents. His expression shifted from surprise to hope. "This is incredible. These are major partnerships." "There's more. I've contacted several Korean American interfaith and intercultural organizations, groups that support interracial families. They're willing to publicly support your relationship. Push back against the narrative your mother is spreading. Give interviews. Share their own stories." "Why would they do that?" Nadine asked, stunned. "Because many of them have been where you are, loving across cultures, fighting families who value tradition over happiness. You'd be surprised how many allies you have. They've just been waiting for someone to rally around, someone visible enough to make a difference." Over the next months, things shifted. Slowly, painfully, but they shifted. Min-jae expanded his legitimate businesses into new markets, partnering with the groups Aunt Hana had connected him with. It reduced his dependence on Atlanta's Korean business community, made him less vulnerable to his mother's influence. Organizations began pushing back against the racist articles. Korean American interfaith groups published responses highlighting Nadine's intelligence and achievements. Young people in interracial relationships started sharing their stories on social media, creating a counter-narrative. Respected community leaders spoke out against the prejudice. It wasn't easy. Mrs. Kang fought every step, cutting off more business relationships and poisoning wells wherever she could. But for every door she closed, Aunt Hana and the new allies helped open 2 more. The empire Min-jae had built didn't crumble. It transformed into something more diverse, more resilient, more his own. Through it all, Nadine and Min-jae grew closer. She moved into his penthouse, and they created a life that blended both their worlds. Haitian music played alongside K-pop. Korean dishes sat next to griot and pickles on their dinner table. They hosted gatherings that mixed Min-jae's supporters with Nadine's family and friends. One evening, Nadine stood in the kitchen teaching Min-jae's business partner how to dance kompa, while Micah laughed and took videos on her phone. Korean food sat on the counter. Next to Haitian dishes Nadine's mother had brought, people from completely different worlds were mixing, laughing, connecting. This feels right, Min-jae said, coming up behind Nadine and wrapping his arms around her waist. What does? This, all of it, building something new instead of protecting something old, creating our own traditions instead of following someone else's rules. Nadine leaned back into him, watching their friends and family enjoy each other. No regrets? Not a single one. Liar. I know you miss your mother sometimes. He was quiet for a moment. I miss the mother I wish I had, the one who'd be happy I found love. But the real woman, the one who'd rather destroy me than see me happy with someone she didn't choose? No. I don't miss her. Maybe someday she'll change. Maybe, but I'm not holding my breath, and I'm not putting my life on hold waiting for her approval. 1 year after the disastrous party Min-jae proposed, he did it in the executive office where they'd first met, at 3 a.m. with coffee and spreadsheets scattered everywhere. No fancy restaurant, no public spectacle, no elaborate plan. Just the two of them in the space where they'd fallen in love. Nadine Joseph. Min-jae got down on one knee right there between the desk and the filing cabinet. You interrupted my life in the best possible way. You challenged me, changed me, made me want to be better than I was. You saw me when I was invisible to myself. You chose me when it cost you everything. Will you marry me? The ring was beautiful, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, blue like the Haitian flag, blue like the ocean her mother had crossed to give Nadine a better life. You remembered, Nadine whispered, touching the stone with shaking fingers. I remember everything about you, every conversation, every smile, every time you twisted your braids while thinking, every Haitian folk song you hummed, everything. Then you remember I told you this. Was a terrible idea. I do. And you're asking anyway? I'm asking because of it. Terrible ideas that work out are the best kind. We're proof of that. Nadine laughed through her tears. Yes, yes, of course, yes. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her. Right there in the office where she'd once cleaned floors, where she'd told his mother she was loud, where they'd shared 3 a.m. coffee and learned each other's stories, where they'd built something real in the middle of his carefully constructed world. I love you, Min-jae said against her lips. I love you too. Even when you're impossible and stubborn and work too much, especially then. They got a letter from Mrs. King 3 days later, formal and cold on expensive stationery. It said she was disowning Min-jae, that he was no longer her son, that she wanted nothing to do with him or his choices, that he was dead to her. Min-jae read it twice, his expression carefully blank. Then he set it down and went to stand at the window, looking out over Atlanta. Nadine found him there an hour later, still staring out at the city. I'm sorry, she said quietly, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Don't be. She made her choice. I made mine. I'd choose you every time. But she's your mother, and you're my future. My choice is clear. They planned 2 ceremonies, one in Miami with Nadine's extended Haitian family, one in Atlanta for Min-jae's supporters and friends. Mrs. Kang wasn't invited to either. She didn't respond to the invitations anyway. The Miami ceremony was vibrant and loud, full of music and dancing, and a family that embraced Min-jae like he'd always belonged. Nadine's mother cried through the whole thing, happy tears for her daughter who'd found love against all odds. Micah served as maid of honor and gave a speech that had everyone laughing and crying at the same time. Min-jae wore traditional Haitian clothing and learned traditional dances and tried his best to keep up with conversations in Creole. He was terrible at it, but his effort was genuine, and Nadine's family loved him for trying. Your husband is trying very hard, Nadine's grandmother whispered during the reception, watching Min-jae attempt to dance with Nadine's cousins. He's a good man, Gran, Nadine replied. Yes, he is. You chose well, little bird. Your papa would be proud. The Atlanta ceremony was smaller but no less meaningful. Aunt Hannah walked Min-jae down the aisle since his mother refused to attend. His business partners and friends, the ones who'd stayed through everything, celebrated like it was their own victory. Because in a way, it was. Proof that love could win, that choosing happiness over tradition was possible. When Nadine walked down the aisle in her white dress, then changed into a beautiful hanbok for the Korean portion of the ceremony, Min-jae's eyes went soft with wonder. You're breathtaking, he said when she reached him. It's the dress. It's you. It's always been you. 2 years into their marriage, Nadine finished her business degree. Min Jae had insisted on paying for school, and she finally agreed to let him after months of argument. She started her own consulting firm, specializing in helping small businesses owned by immigrants and people of color. Her first client was her mother, helping her open the Haitian restaurant she'd always dreamed of. Min Jae had slowly shifted his operations over the years, phasing out the criminal elements and focusing on legitimate businesses. It took time and wasn't complete, but he was trying. For Nadine, for their future, for the man he wanted to become. They bought a house in a quiet neighborhood somewhere between Little Haiti and Brookhaven. Somewhere that was just theirs, not too close to either of their old lives. A fresh start. 3 years into their marriage, Nadine got pregnant. "We're having a baby," she told Min Jae one morning over breakfast, her hand shaking as she showed him the positive test. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he looked at her, and his eyes were wet. "We're having a baby. I'm going to be a father. You're going to be an amazing father. I have no idea how to do this. My own father died when I was 20, and before that he was training me to run a criminal empire. I don't know how to be a good father. So we figure it out together, like everything else." Their son was born on a sticky August morning. They named him Andre J. Andre for Nadine's grandfather who'd fought for Haiti's freedom. J from Min Jae's name, carrying forward the legacy he was trying to build. Andre had Nadine's dark skin and Min Jae's sharp A's. He was beautiful and perfect, and both of them fell completely in love the moment they held him. Nadine's mother moved in to help, filling the house with Creole lullabies and compa music. Aunt Hannah visited constantly, bringing Korean traditions and stories about Min Jae's father that he'd never heard. Micah, now graduated and working as an engineer, came home every weekend to dote on her nephew. They built a family that didn't look like anyone else's. That didn't follow anyone's rules but their own. That took the best from both cultures and created something entirely new. 4 years after Andre was born, the doorbell rang unexpectedly on a Sunday afternoon. Min Jae answered it and froze. Mrs. King stood on the porch. She looked older, smaller somehow. Her perfect composure was cracked around the edges. She was holding a wrapped present. "Ayomoni," Min Jae said carefully. "Min Jae." Her voice was quieter than he remembered, less sharp. "I'd like to meet my grandson, if that's allowed. It's been 6 years, 6 years of silence. I know. You disowned me. You tried to destroy my business. You tried to destroy Nadine. I know." Mrs. King's hands tightened on the present. "And I was wrong." The words hung in the air like something foreign, something Min Jae had never expected to hear. "What changed?" he asked. "I got old. I got lonely. I watched you build a life without me, and it was good, happy. Everything I tried to force on you would have made you miserable." She looked past him into the house where she could hear Andre laughing at something. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I'm asking for a chance to know my grandson, to maybe eventually earn back some small place in your life." Min Jae didn't answer immediately. He turned to find Nadine standing behind him with Andre on her hip. She met his eyes, and he saw the question there. "What do you want to do?" "One chance," Min Jae said finally. "You speak to Nadine with respect. You don't criticize our choices. You don't try to control our lives. You accept our family as it is. Can you do that?" "Yes, I can try." "Then come in." It wasn't easy. Mrs. King was still Mrs. King, opinionated and critical and used to getting her way. But she tried. Awkwardly, stiffly, but genuinely. She learned to make Andre laugh. She helped Nadine with Korean recipes for the restaurant. She apologized, not all at once, but in small moments over many months. "I still don't like her," Nadine admitted one night after Mrs. King had gone home. "You don't have to like her. I barely like her most days." "But she's trying." "She is. That's more than I expected. More than I thought possible." "Think she'll ever really change?" Min Jae pulled Nadine close. "I think people can surprise you. You taught me that." "I did. You did. A cleaner who stopped a crime boss in his tracks, who made him believe he could be better, who built a family out of broken pieces and made it beautiful. If that's not proof people can change, I don't know what is." 7 years after Nadine first walked into that executive office, she stood in the same space. Now it was hers, renovated and transformed into the headquarters for her consulting firm. 20 employees worked in the open floor plan she'd designed, helping immigrant-owned businesses thrive. Min Jae stopped by with lunch like he did most days. Andre, now in preschool, had a small desk set up in Nadine's office where he colored while his parents worked. You know what I realized today? Nadine asked, watching Minjae unpack Korean takeout. What? I never thanked you. For what? I should be thanking you for everything. For seeing me. That first night when I was just the cleaning lady who interrupted your argument. You could have had me fired. Instead, you saw me. Minjae stood and pulled her up with him, wrapping his arms around her waist. Nadine, you were impossible not to see. You walked into my life like you owned it, told my mother she was loud, and made me coffee that didn't taste like death. You didn't give me a choice but to notice you. Still, thank you for taking a chance on the cleaner. Thank you for taking a chance on the crime boss. Ex-crime boss? Mostly ex. Mostly, he agreed with a smile. They kissed while Andre made gagging noises from his desk, and Nadine laughed against Minjae's mouth. Years later, when Andre asked his parents how they met, Nadine would smile and say, I was cleaning his office and he was making terrible coffee. And Minjae would add, and she stopped me in my tracks. Like a superhero? Andre would ask, his eyes wide. Exactly like a superhero. Minjae would confirm, pulling Nadine close. The best kind. The real kind. And Nadine would rest her head on his shoulder, thinking about that night so long ago when she'd chosen bravery over invisibility and how that single choice had changed everything. Sometimes the smallest moments create the biggest transformations. Sometimes a cleaner stops a king, and sometimes, if the story's really good, the king realizes he needed stopping all along.